My name is John Scott. I'm originally from Madison, Wisconsin. It's where I grew up and graduated from high school, and also where I was drafted from in 1965, December 27th to be exact, drafted into the Army. I currently live in Kenosha, but will be shortly moving to Menasha to be closer to my daughter, some grandsons, and other family members. When I graduated from high school, I attended the University of Wisconsin in Madison for 1 year. However, my grades were not up to their standards, and I got put on probation, which meant I had to sit out a semester. As soon as I didn't re-register for school in September of 1965, I received a draft notification, which meant that I was going to be conscripted into the Army. So the government was watching over people who had what were called deferments. Either you were married or you were in college. You didn't have to go into the Army, but as soon as I didn't re-register for college, I was drafted. And that was in October where I got the letter. And then December 27th, I was sworn in with about 55 other men from Madison. And we then were available for the next 2 years of our lives serving in the Army. Well, it was interesting. My first day at Fort Lewis, Washington, I went outside without a hat on, not knowing that I was required to wear a hat. And another soldier in uniform asked me in a very stern fashion, "Where's your hat, troop?" And I said, "Don't have one." "You can't be outside without a hat." So the reason I emphasize that is that the military is all about discipline. And of course, if you don't know what the rules are, you can't follow them. But eventually, all of the rules were laid out. And one of the things I enjoyed most about being in the military is the discipline. People are required to do certain things, and you do them. And I enjoy that in the Army. I enjoy it in my private life. So I spent the next 9 months at Fort Lewis, Washington, which is just south of Seattle. And I was part of the reactivation of the 4th Infantry Division. The division is, I'm not sure, about 4,000 men. And was very fortunate in that I went to Vietnam with the men that I trained with for 9 months. And I was a member of a reconnaissance platoon. And we had a 40-man platoon. And to this day, I'm in contact with many of those same 40 men. Well, our journey to Vietnam, which was in September of '66, we boarded a ship, a troop ship. And we actually most of us had our first ocean cruise. It was 3 weeks in length. And when you say step foot in Vietnam, we actually landed in what's called landing craft in Vietnam. We got down out of the ship on rope ladders, loaded into what are called landing craft. We were floated up or brought up close to the shore, and then the front of the craft drops down and you walk out through the water, and your step foot in Vietnam was actually in water. But we really didn't know what to expect. You know, there was no gun battles going on. We loaded onto trucks, which would then transport us to our first what we call base camp, and that was somewhat temporary. And from there, we were all transported to a town called Dau Tien, which is near the Cambodian border, and we built our base camp by ourselves in a Michelin rubber plantation. So when we weren't out in the field doing our normal military activities, we had to build our own barracks, which was really a team building effort. So the average day was boring. And I think that's why I don't have much recollection of most of my time in Vietnam, because many of the days were just mundane. You were in the base camp doing the typical duties that had to be done there. But on the other hand, there were days when you had to go out in the field. As a member of a reconnaissance platoon, I would go out with 4, 5, 6 other guys, and we would get dropped off by helicopters, and we would be out sleeping, trying to avoid contact with the enemy as much as we can, and we would report back into our headquarters what we were observing in terms of what the enemy activity was. So those were days when you were more on edge and when your life was more in danger. So when we come back from that, we typically had a few days where we didn't have to do anything. And then there were other instances where there were one in particular that happened in March of '67. It's called the Battle of Sui Tre. There was a unit of mortar platoon that was being overrun by the enemy, North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong. And everybody that could get there got there as soon as they could to support them. That was probably the most eventful thing that happened in my time with the 4th Infantry Division. And that happened in March. I would say then in approximately late April, I asked for a transfer. And the reason I transferred was because the original group of our recon platoon was starting to break down. Some guys were able to go home. Our platoon leader's requirement, he's the lieutenant that's in charge of the platoon. His commitment for his ROTC program was up, and so he went home. And when he had to be replaced, the replacement just didn't meet my expectations. So I asked to be transferred to a helicopter company and be a door gunner. And many would ask, why would you want to do that? Because there was nothing to hide behind up in a helicopter, and it was one of the more dangerous jobs. Well, I didn't look at it that way. I looked at it as not sleeping in the swamps and the rice paddies and the jungles and having to deal with the snakes and other little critters that, not to mention the enemy, but we were probably more intimidated by leeches and snakes than we were by sometimes the enemy that we were trying to fight against. So I transferred to a unit that's known as the Outlaws. Each helicopter company has a team name or a platoon name, and ours was the Outlaws. We have helicopters that had a steer skull on the nose cone, and as it turns out, it was one of the more well-known helicopter companies that served in Vietnam. And I served there for the final 6 months of my 13 months in Vietnam. Well, I think the biggest thing is the camaraderie that you build, at least with my original reconnaissance platoon. There's a well-known series about men who served in the Second World War called the Brotherhood. I share that same brotherhood with the men that I served with in 2005, started reuniting with after nearly 40 years of not having seen each other, 30 years, excuse me. We started somehow getting connected again. And 8 of us met down in Southern Illinois for the first time. For me, it was the first time. And our platoon leader, who I mentioned, his name's William Bradbury, he made the commitment to try to find all 40 of our original platoon members. And through various search engines that he had available to him from other resources, He was able to find 32 of our original 40 men, and we've had as many as 17 together at one time at various reunions that we started going to just about every year for the next 12 years, I think it was. So it's been very beneficial, and we stay in contact with each other, even though we haven't reunited for about 2 years now. So that probably is the most meaningful part of my time in Vietnam and how it's related to the rest of my life. But I think when I first came back from Vietnam, I really had a recognition of how fortunate we as Americans are to live in the freedoms and, quite honestly, the luxury compared to the rest of the world. Vietnam was my first experience outside of the United States, other than maybe Canada. And so it was really an eye-opener to realize what a difference many people in the rest of the world, how they live versus how we live. The other startling, memorable thing was how the small children, related to us as soldiers. They were the innocents. I have pictures of small children sitting on my knee. And matter of fact, I have gone back to Vietnam twice. And the second time, with the guide that I had, I took pictures. I took some of my pictures from them with the small children, and we asked around in the community where I thought those pictures were taken if anybody recognized, the children that I had in my pictures. And it's been a long time, so those children would have been in their late 40s or 50s now, but nobody recognized anybody that I had. I would have loved to have been able to meet them. And I guess along those lines, returning to Vietnam was a very healthful trip for me. I met people who fought for the other side, and they were very supportive, even though they were on the other team, and they had full knowledge that either I or one of my unit may have killed one or more of their family. They had absolutely no hostility, or on the other hand, they actually invited me into their home and welcomed me as a friend and a guest. And I continue to be Facebook friends with the wife of that couple that did that for me. My guide's parents were also Viet Cong, and I was after he took me to both places that I actually served in, we went to his hometown, which is further south in Vietnam, and I met his family. I was the first American person to ever set foot in his parents' home. And again, I was welcomed like a family member, and I relish that memory a great deal. Well, it was, I guess, immediate. I didn't really. One of the big differences between like Desert Storm and the Middle East wars that we've been involved in, and the Vietnam War, is that we as Vietnam veterans typically came back as individuals, as opposed to the wars in the Middle East where units would be deployed there, companies and battalions, excuse me, and they would return as a unit. And therefore, they would be welcomed home with bands and celebration. Where I came home as an individual, I stayed with my sister who lived in Oakland, California area, and that's where I came back to. She picked me up at the center there where I was discharged, and I stayed with her for a week. So it was kind of a nice transition before I got home to Madison. But I don't have any real memory of how that transition took place. I tried to get, relaxed and enjoy some time. And then I found a job to, actually I was allowed to go back to the job I had when I got drafted, which I stayed at for a short period of time, and then found a job in the same industry, but in a different location, different company. So I don't feel I had any trouble, transitioning back to civilian life. I would also say, because I came back from Vietnam with less than 90 days left, I was discharged right away. I don't know how I would have handled having to do 3 months of regular duty after the experiences of serving in combat and in Vietnam. My partner, who was very attuned to my desires, I'd always told her that I would like to go back to Vietnam someday. And so one day I came home and she had made arrangements for us to go on a Viking cruise, river cruise, which started out in Bangkok, Thailand. And then we flew to Saigon, or what's now called Ho Chi Minh City. We stayed there for a few days and had tours every day, and got on a boat and went up the Mekong River into Cambodia. And from Cambodia, we flew to Hanoi, which is the capital of all of Vietnam, and it was the focal point of North Vietnam during the war. And our guide, who was assigned, when you travel with Viking, you have a guide assigned to you. He stays with you every day, you and a group of other people. He's the one that I alluded to earlier. He and Carol and I developed a very good relationship, and he invited me back. If I wanted to come back to go exactly where I served, he would be my guide, and so I did. I went back the following summer, actually over July 4th of 2018, I believe it was, and spent 10 days traveling to the exact locations I served in, and then, as I said, going to his hometown and meeting his family. And that was very healing for me, to know that the people in Vietnam, at least those that I encountered and the ones that Carol and I met when we were there together, and I made it clear that I was a Vietnam veteran. I wore hats and T-shirts that announced that. We never had any problem with any hostility. I cherish the memories that came out of both of those trips, and learning about how people in Vietnam now treat Americans who are welcome there.
Has your viewpoint on the military changed, and if it has, how so? After serving?
I probably would have made the military a career, given my enjoyment or my attitude towards the military experience, that you have a chain of command, and that everybody has a role to play. And as long as you maintain your role and do your job, everything runs smoothly. And that's the kind of person I like to think that I am. In my jobs, in my civilian life, I'm given a job to do, and I do it to the best of my ability. And that's what I enjoyed about the military, is that you were expected to do certain things, and you did them with the direction of your commanding officers, and I just enjoyed that life. But I did not re-enlist because I did not want to go back to Vietnam. Not necessarily out of fear for myself, but I didn't want my parents to be put through another year of hell, worrying about me every day. So But again, I have no regrets about serving in the Army, no regrets about my time in Vietnam. I have regrets about, the lives that were lost and lives that have been affected since then every day. Not just ours, but those of the Vietnamese people as well. Carol was actually my high school sweetheart. In June of last year, we celebrated our 60-year love affair. And I say 60-year love affair because we never married each other. Vietnam became a division for us. I went to Vietnam, and she was 3 years younger than I am, and she was not waiting for me when I came home, but I didn't hold that against her. Her parents intervened, her mother intercepted my letters, so there was a lot of things that are happening that were not on any of my control nor hers. So when I came back, I did see her a few times, and we agreed to, based on my request, to go our separate ways. But that was difficult to do, and over the years I knew that I still loved her. So in 1998 I found her, we found each other, and we lived the last 27 years of her life as a couple. And it was the most personally rewarding time of my life. We traveled a great deal, and because she was dealing with cancer, she felt that every trip was something to look forward to in the future, and that was part of her therapy, her cancer therapy. But she finally succumbed to her illnesses in June of last year. I miss her greatly. We were actually scheduled to be on a May trip to Japan and South Korea this coming May. But needless to say, that was not going to happen. But she was a source of great inspiration, very intelligent, very beautiful, and I loved her dearly. To this day, I have a cross in my heart on a chain that has her ashes in it, so she remains on my heart every day. So she was very supportive of me and my the reunions that I would go to. She went with me to a few of them, but she, always felt a little bit like a third wheel. So I went to many of them without her, but she was very supportive of that. And for that, I will always be very grateful to her. And we enjoyed our life together in the time that we had left to do it. Well, in terms of the future for our veteran community, I certainly hope that the current administration finds a way to improve the technology of going to war. It certainly is drastically different than my time in Vietnam from, it's almost 60 years ago now. So technology in the way soldiers in the military go to war and to conflicts is a totally different thing than it was many years ago. So I just hope that our ability to create the best weaponry and use the greatest technology to make being in the military as safe as possible. And I would certainly hope that nobody ever has to go into a situation where their lives are in danger, as mine was on a daily basis. But if they do, it typically makes them better people, at least my perspective. And I'm very thankful that I was able to serve as I did and not have any major casualty or major injuries done to me. So very lucky in that respect. Well, in summary, I guess I would just like to say that my life has been enhanced by my experience in the military. I use on a daily basis, virtually all the time since I served in the military, a little aspect of the discipline and the way of life that you're encouraged to follow as a member of the military. I again do everything I can to support the cause of veterans. I get all my care through the Veterans Administration and the hospitals, and I'm very proud to say that virtually all of my care has been done on a very excellent level. So for that, I'm grateful to our nation for understanding and recognizing that veterans do need and deserve medical care that maybe many of them cannot necessarily afford. And it's a tribute to our service that we're given that care. Our stories need to be told, whether it's a Vietnam veteran or Korea or Middle East or whatever. And hopefully that the other interviews that you've done have all been in a positive vein, context, and that they've had good things to share.